Hi, guys. I'm excited about today's show. We're going to talk about cutting the cord. We're going to talk about getting rid of cable finally. I did it recently, and I just want to talk to you about my experience. I'm going to share some scripture with you as well, and we're going to talk about what we're thankful for. After all, this is Thanksgiving week. But first, this quick message. Thanksgiving is here, Christmas is coming, and the new year is just around the corner. If you're like me, then New Year's gets you to start thinking about your goals. The Goal Process 101 ebook is here to help you. Goal Process 101 will walk you through everything from choosing the best goals to making them reality in your life. It helped me start this podcast. Check it out at christiannerdsunite.com/goals. Now, back to the show. Welcome back. And I can't believe it's already Thanksgiving. 2020 has flown by for me. Crazy year. And the memes definitely have shown how crazy a year it has been. From murder hornets to COVID-19 to lockdowns to any number of things, to my daughter having to go to school from the house. It's been really, really crazy, but I'm super thankful for it. I'm thankful for everything that has happened in my life. I say that now, a lot of people will go, but there's bad things that happen. Here's my take, and I just want to share it with you. I'm thankful for everything that's happened because that makes me who I am. If those things hadn't happened, I'd be a different person. I'd be in a different place. I'd be doing different things. I might not be doing this podcast. So every little thing I've gone through has built up to this moment, to where I am right now. Everything that God has put in my way, everything that God has given me, every struggle that I have had to deal with, they've all culminated in what I am right now. And I'm happy with what I am right now. And I hope you are too. This is Thanksgiving week. This is, it's Tuesday, and we're getting ready to eat a bunch of turkey and going to be, hanging out with friends, maybe, depending on what your situation is. We do have some family coming in from out of state, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. It's going to be an interesting holiday season this year. Things are not going to be quite the way they usually are, but that's okay. It's okay for things to be a little bit different. Well, today we're going to talk about cutting the cord. Going to talk about getting rid of cable. And for me, the big impetus there was to save money. I've thought about this idea for a long, long time. I've talked to friends about it. People say, oh, you should definitely do it. I did it a long time ago. Best thing I ever did. But I would look at my bill and I would think about how it would work. And it just was overwhelming and I couldn't figure it out. This year I decided this is the year I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to see what it's going to take and what I really need and how it's all going to work in the end. So let me kind of throw that out to you, and we're going to go through it. First, a couple of scriptures talking about wealth and talking about money. Proverbs 21:20. The precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. And Proverbs 22:7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Well, with that last verse in mind, I have felt like I've been a slave to my cable company for years and years and years, spending ridiculous sums of money to be able to watch TV and be able to watch all the shows I want and be able to see all the channels I want. And I just wanted to take time and figure it out, see what it was. Now, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to debate the virtue or vice of any of the options that I'm going to talk about, but I want to share with you what I found that saved me a considerable amount of money, and I feel is much better stewardship of what God has given me. Now, your mileage may vary, but this is what my experience has been. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about getting rid of cable TV and going to streaming only. Now, when we talk about going to streaming only, a lot of people will go, "Well, but I want live TV. I want all these things." Well, let's delve into that. Number one, why do you have cable? Why do you have TV? What is it that you're watching? What is it that it's doing for you that is important enough for you to spend money on it? And I think that's what we need to ask ourselves anytime we're spending money. What is it that's really important? Okay, now, first of all, for me, it came down to I still need internet. Okay, so I'm working with a major cable company. They handled my home phone, they handled my internet service, and they handled my TV. And I'm going to leave that company nameless for now. But I still needed internet, so I couldn't get rid of them completely, or I was going to have to find somebody else. So in our particular area, and I did quite a bit of research, talked to several different people with different companies for our area, for where for what I need, because I do tons of stuff online. Sticking with my current cable provider for internet was definitely the right answer. That was the solution. So when I say I got rid of my cable company, that's not entirely true. They're now my internet service provider, and that's all they are. So any of these options, you're going to need some kind of internet service, whether that's cable, fiber, satellite, whatever it is. In our instance, the area we live in, satellite providers for internet, they don't tend to be very good. They tend to have major issues. Fiber simply isn't an option in my neighborhood yet. That may change in the future. I hope so. But for me, we ended up staying with the cable company. Now, any of these options, if we're talking about doing streaming only from now on, any of these options nowadays, you need to look at the data usage limits. Now, some of you go, well, there's no data usage limits on cable internet. Yeah, there are now. Maybe you haven't looked at your bill lately, or maybe you just don't run up against those numbers very often. But I do so much online. I do so much streaming as far as video work. I upload huge files for things that I've edited. For me, data usage limits, they're an issue. And I had to look at that and figure out, where exactly do we fall? So be aware of it, look into it, especially if you're going to be on like a satellite provider. A lot of the satellite internet services have really restrictive data limits. So just want to be aware of it. Take a look at it, see what your situation is. For me, sticking with my cable provider was the right one. Now, there are lots of options here as far as once we got rid of cable. But before I get there, I want to talk to you about what actually happened. One day I was looking through my bill, and I finally found a way to look at my bill online in such a way that every little thing was itemized for me. We had a home phone still. Um, when I say we had a home phone, we were paying for a home phone, but I didn't actually have a physical phone hooked up anymore. Why? Why do I do that? I don't know. But it was my understanding at the time when I still had it that I was getting a bundle discount that saved me basically the same amount of money as it cost me to have the home phone. And I thought, okay, I can live with that. That makes sense. But here's what I found when I finally was able to look at all the different itemized things. Well, number one, my home phone price had changed, and now the discount was not as much as the home phone cost me. So that's something that I let slip through the cracks. Now, number two, this is the big one. I was paying almost as much in taxes and fees for the home phone as I was paying for the home phone service itself. So rather than paying $25 for my home phone service, because of the taxes and fees, I was paying almost $50 a month just for the home phone. Once I realized that, I was like, oh, we're going to get a spreadsheet out because I'm that kind of nerd. I use spreadsheets all the time. Google Sheets, my favorite thing in the world. So I set up a Google spreadsheet and I started working through this. I quickly realized that because of taxes and fees on everything we used from our cable provider, our bill was much higher than I thought it was when I was trying to do this in the past. Because I would look at, we pay for cable, we pay this much, this number. And I would try to figure out, is there a way for me to get rid of that and still have the streaming services and some live TV things that I want? And can I make that make sense? And it just wasn't adding up. Now that I've got this fully itemized list, I was able to check off every little thing. I had so many cable boxes and the DVRs and the taxes and fees on each of those devices, and started adding all these things up. And I quickly realized I was paying more for my home phone and my cable than I ever imagined. My internet service was much cheaper than I actually realized it was. So it made perfect sense for me to do this. So now the next step was I had to figure out what it is that I still wanted. If I got rid of cable, what does that mean for me? So one thing I did was I got my family involved. I talked to my kids. I talked to my wife because I'm not going to upset them. So we went through a lot of different things. And number one was, do we need live TV or do we not need live TV? So we spent a lot of time talking about it. And for my wife, it came down to, yes, we need live TV. Okay. Now, once you decide you do need live TV, now you have to look at, now you really have to start looking at the pricing. We were able to finally find a setup that made perfect sense for us. And I'm going to talk through some of that. When you decide you do need live TV, here's my recommendation. Go through your cable TV, go through every channel, and check mark whether or not that channel is a must-have or not. Okay. You'll want to go through each individual channel, see what's something that you just feel like you can't live without. What are things you can absolutely live without? What are things that you could get by without? And what I mean by that is maybe you really like particular shows on this particular station, but with one of the other streaming services you have, you can watch them on demand, but maybe you have to wait a few months to watch it. So once again, I made a Google spreadsheet and I made a list of absolutely every channel that was an absolute must for us. And then I started looking at all the different live TV options, and there are a ton. So, just a few, I'll name just a few real quick. There's YouTube TV Live, there's Sling TV. I've probably seen the commercials for that one. Hulu has a live TV option now. Philo is an option that a lot of people probably haven't heard of. AT&T Live Now is also an option if you're a AT&T person. Fubo is one other one that I was not familiar with before I started doing this research. So what did I do? I went to each of the sites for each of these different channels, and I figured out which ones had the channels that I really wanted on them. And I started marking them off as as it became obvious that they did or did not have the channels that we wanted. It was a great way for me to figure out, niche down which ones were going to be the best solution for us. So, a couple of quick things. Philo, I mentioned a minute ago. Maybe you haven't heard of it. Philo, by far the cheapest option out there. Now, it doesn't have a ton of options for live TV, but it is definitely the cheapest one. Now, I mentioned AT&T Live Now. It's a super great option, but here's what I found when we investigated it. It had most of the channels we really wanted. And then you could add other channels. And as you started adding other channels, the price increased considerably. It was by far the most expensive that I could find. And honestly, it was pretty much like just going back to my cable provider, except I was going to be streaming it. So AT&T did not make sense for us at all. Fubo is a great little service. The price is pretty competitive, but the channel listings are a little limited. Hulu and Sling, very similar depending on what you purchase. Sling has a couple of different options. If you purchase both of the Sling options, you're going to have a similar set of TV channels. But what we came down to was YouTube TV Live was the right option for us. It had the right pricing. It had the right channel list for us. And it just gave us the most flexibility. So YouTube TV Live was definitely the right option for us. Now, the other thing we looked at when we were looking at all of these options were, do we still need local channels? And for me, local channels, it's definitely a requirement. Local weather is super important in the area I live. I'm living in Oklahoma, and we are right in the middle of Tornado Alley. In fact, about 7 years ago, my little town was just about ripped in two by a huge tornado. We actually did a feature-length documentary about the tornado that played had a limited theatrical release. So that being said, local channels were super important. Now, we had two options. We could do antenna, or does the streaming service have it? So for us, we started looking at all of them, comparing the two. YouTube TV Live had all of our locals that we wanted. There was only really one channel that was quote unquote local that we end up having to have an antenna if we want to watch it. And that's Ion, which we really like watching Ion because we like watching things like Criminal Minds and Law and Order. And that plays on that channel a lot. So, but we do need an antenna if we're going to watch that particular channel. But all the other locals were included in the streaming service, which is perfect for us. That is not true of all streaming services. You'll have to check each individual one, and you'll have to check your local area. They may be completely different. those are the things that we looked at. Now, I'm not a huge sports fan, but be aware, if you are a sports nerd, be aware every one of these options has different sports channel options. And honestly, if you're a sports fan, probably live TV is something you're going to want to have access to stream. And the live sports are going to be different on each platform. Be aware, check them out. Do the same thing I said with all the other channels. If you're an SEC guy, make sure you have access to the SEC channels. Those kind of things. Check it out, be aware, and just know what you're getting into. The other thing that we needed to look at was the number of screens we could watch on. And for us, this was pretty important because there's my wife, myself, my youngest daughter, who still lives here at home, my oldest, who is at college. And we were trying to figure out how many screens, how many TVs are we going to have running all at the same time, streaming something from one of our services. And every one of these is different. I will tell you the majority of them only allow 2. Some, for an additional charge, will allow you a third screen. YouTube TV allowed 3, which is perfect for our current household. If something happened where my daughter wanted to watch something on her TV and I wanted to go into the living room and watch something different, and my wife wanted to watch a third show in the bedroom, that is completely doable for us. 4 would have been better, but I'll take 3. 2 was probably going to be a little iffy, but we would have made it work if we had to. Now, I will say most of the ones that only have a 2 screen limit, most of them have an additional charge. Usually it's around $5 to add an additional screen. I have seen almost none that had more than 3 viewing options available. Now, the other thing to think about, maybe live TV is not your thing. Maybe on demand is where it's at for you. And there are so many options of on demand. I'm not going to even begin to scratch the surface of all of them, but I'm going to run through some that I think are important and that I think probably you already have. Now, here's something that I have had this conversation with a couple of different people. They said, well, but by the time I pay for all these streaming services, it's just as much as my cable was. Well, here's the thing. And this depends on you. Your mileage may differ. For me, I was paying for cable and I was paying for these streaming services. So if I got rid of cable and saved money, which when I got rid of cable and I started paying for YouTube TV Live, I saved a whole lot of money. For me, we save almost $120 a month just on that one change. And I'll tell you, most of it is not the cost of the cable. Most of it is the cost of the rental equipment and the taxes and fees that are lumped on top of it. It's crazy. So that being said, things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, I was already paying for these. Now I talk to other people and they're like, well, I got to pay for these other things. Are you already paying for them? If you are, then this might be a thing for you to look at. So what options are out there? Well, there's Netflix. It's, kind of the big dog, losing some traction because a lot of other people are coming on board. A lot of people are pulling their content from Netflix to make their own streaming services. Not super happy about that in general, but I understand. Amazon Prime is a great place to watch on-demand video content. HBO Max. HBO Max used to be called HBO Live, I believe. Or no, HBO Now, I think is what it was called. So HBO Max is kind of new. It's not exactly new, but it's changing. And with like our conversation last week, Warner Brothers taking all of the DC content and dumping it onto HBO Max. HBO Max for us nerds is going to be something we want to look at. Hulu is huge right now. And if you don't know, Disney now owns Hulu. They are the majority stakeholder in Hulu. Why is that important? Because Disney bought Fox, and Fox is primarily, most of their properties are on Hulu. So if you're into any of those Fox properties, like Futurama or a lot of those kind of shows, those things are available on Hulu. Be aware. This also means that anything that Disney owns, and Disney owns a lot, anything that Disney owns that it feels like is not quite Disney appropriate, it's not Disney friendly, it's going to be on Hulu. And it might be crazy to think about that, but that is the way this thing is happening. Of course, we've got the new kid on the block, Disney Plus, which is killing it with The Mandalorian. Tons of Marvel content that's about to come out. I'm super excited about WandaVision and about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I really want to see that. I'm disappointed it hasn't launched yet. WandaVision is coming out January is the last I saw. So going to be great stuff. Apple TV is not really new, but they are starting to get some Apple TV only items. So there'll be some titles there that you won't find other places. Definitely check it out. There are a lot of the one channel services. That's what I call them. Like CBS All Access, Peacock, these companies that are trying to start their own streaming services, but they only have the one company. Then there are tons and tons of free ones. Pluto TV comes to mind. Pluto TV is actually kind of cool. Tons and tons of shows. They're not traditional. It's not a traditional on-demand service. Pluto is a little different. Pluto is like channels, but a channel will be a single show for hours on end. My personal favorite, classic Doctor Who channel on Pluto. I don't get to choose which episode I get to watch, but I can watch hours and hours of Doctor Who if I want, even if I just want it playing in the background for some noise. Great stuff. Be able to watch my old Tom Baker stuff from the 80s. Peter Davidson, Doctor Who, good stuff on Pluto TV, and tons of other things. If you are a horror fan, Pluto TV is definitely something to check out. Another one, this one's fairly new. I was unaware of it until about 3 or 4 months ago. It's IMDb TV. If you're familiar with IMDb, that's the Internet Movie Database. If you want to know anything about any movie or TV show ever, it's the place to go. You want to know, who is that actor that was in that one movie? That's the place to go. You want to know, when did that particular movie open? That's the place to go. So IMDb, really cool website. IMDb TV is something new, and you can watch movies for free. So check it out. May or may not be for you, but tons of stuff on there, and it's an interesting one to look at. Now, for me, there's one other love of my life, and that is old British comedies. You may or may not be into British comedies, but I am. I remember growing up watching old British comedies like Are You Being Served and Keeping Up Appearances and The Vicar of Dibley on Sunday nights on PBS. It was one of my favorite things to do. And then following that, they would play Doctor Who. So it was a great time for me as a kid. So lots of nostalgia there. Now, a lot of those shows are not available anywhere except for 2 places. Now, Acorn TV is one, the other is BritBox. what I have found personally is that BritBox has a lot more of the older BBC content, and it's actually the one that I prefer. Um, Acorn TV tends to have more newer products from British television and less of the BBC content. So depends on what you're looking for, but for me, BritBox is a must, and I'm saving so much money that spending an extra $5 on BritBox every month is worth it. So, those are just some of the on-demand services. There are a ton more, but when we went through this whole process, like I said, we were already paying for all these extra streaming services. We were paying for cable. We were paying for our telephone. We were paying for all this equipment. We went through the whole process and literally saved over $120 a month by making this change. And I still have all those extra streaming services that I pay for. It was eye-opening, and I wish I had done it a long, long time ago. But definitely well worth it. I hope you will take some time and at least explore it. I think being a good steward of what God has given us is super important, and I feel like this was the best stewardship that I could do right now during this crazy time of 2020, and be able to handle that. Well, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Prayers and blessings on your families as you join together. Definitely ask that you pray for each other, and we will see you on the Facebook page in the Facebook group. Hey, don't forget to go like and share the podcast. We'd love for you to do that. Join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Christian Nerds Unite. You can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook at Christian Nerds Unite, and check out our YouTube page. Easiest way to find our YouTube right now is to go to christiannerdsunite.com/YouTube. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas. And I know you're like, oh, we just got done with Thanksgiving. Well, we're going to talk about something called Advent. If you're not familiar with Advent, I think you will really enjoy next week's show. But for now, blessings, and we'll see you next week.